This is from Deuteronomy, our reading from today, and this is summing up the few verses that go above it. 3 times a year, all your men must appear before the Lord your God at the place he will choose. The place he chooses eventually becomes Jerusalem. And these are the three major festivals for the Jewish people: the festival of unleavened bread, the festival of weeks, and the festival of tabernacles. The festival of unleavened bread, their Passover, is our Easter, and in a sense is every Mass we celebrate, which is why we have the unleavened host, which becomes the body and blood of Christ. The Festival of Weeks, now that comes 7 weeks or 50 days after the first sickle is put to the harvest, but in effect it comes 50 days after Passover. What comes 50 days after our Passover? Easter, Pentecost. And in fact, the Festival of Weeks is referred to as Pentecost in English, and there's a tradition that at Pentecost, Pentecost commemorated not just a harvest, but it commemorated the giving of the law, the Mosaic law, to the Jews. The tradition was that it was 50 days after they had come through the Red Sea that Moses went up to the mountain. He spends 40 days on the mountain and comes down with the law for the Jews. So at our Pentecost, the Holy Spirit comes down in flames of fire and fills the apostles and Mary with a new law, a new dispensation, the law of love. And then we have the festival of the tabernacles. That would come at the fall, during the fall harvest, the late harvest, and the Jews would live in tents to remind themselves of how they lived after they left Egypt and were sojourning through the wilderness on their way to the promised land. To remind themselves that this is a pilgrimage, this mortal life on earth, that we are betwixt and between birth and our ultimate fate after death. And that in a sense, we are waiting to fully inhabit the promised land, as they did in their 40 years of wanderings, living in tents with the presence of God in a tabernacle, because this is before Jerusalem becomes the capital of the Israelite religion and nation, and before the temple is built. The tabernacle, remember, contains the Ark of the Covenant, and God moves with them as they move, as they live in tents during what we're reading in Exodus and in Numbers and in Deuteronomy. Now, what does the Festival of Tabernacles become for us? We understand that the Passover becomes Easter for Christians. The Festival of Weeks becomes Pentecost for Christians. Tabernacles is the Transfiguration. Do you remember when John and James and Peter are up on the mountain with Jesus and they see him transfigured along with Moses, the law, and Elijah, the prophet? And Peter says, "It is good for us to be here. Let us build tents to commemorate this," because he understands this is a new form of the Festival of Tabernacles. And somehow in the Festival of Tabernacles, the Jews were led to understand the presence of God among them even on their journey, which is kind of what happens at the Transfiguration. The apostles see more clearly the shining divine nature of Christ and his association with the law and the prophets, Moses and Elijah. And they're closer at that moment to their destination, but they're not quite there. They still have Holy Week to endure and the Passion, which we're reading about in the Gospels. Anyway, that's just a little bit about this. You can read more about this if you just Google it and look at some of the articles. There's a lot online, including some very interesting sermons and things about these three holidays for the Jews and what they become for Christians.